The blue light from multiple monitors cast a harsh glow across Brian Court's office as the clock struck midnight. His coffee, the third cup of the evening, sat untouched beside his ergonomic keyboard. Most CEOs would have delegated this level of security analysis, but Brian had built Sentinel cybersecurity solutions from the ground up by staying hands-on. The anomaly in Durham Development's logs caught his attention like a misplaced pixel in a perfect image. His eyes narrowed as he leaned forward, fingers dancing across the keyboard. As he dug deeper into the data, he muttered, 3 a.m. logins from the Caymans, pulling up the IP trace. The credentials belonged to Robbie Durham, his supposed best friend since college. Initially, he almost dismissed it. Robbie was known for his frequent business trips and odd working hours, but something about the pattern set off warning bells in Brian's mind. The sound of footsteps in the otherwise empty office made him look up. Andon Monroe, his head of security, stood in the doorway, tablet in hand. The former NSA analyst's expression was carefully neutral, but Brian knew that look meant trouble. "Sir, we have completed the sweep of Mrs. Court's devices you requested," Andon said, his voice measured. "You might want to take a look at this." Brian gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Show me." Andon pulled up a series of maps and timestamps on his tablet. "We have identified a pattern in Mrs. Court's movements. Every Wednesday and Sunday, like clockwork, her phone connects to a Wi-Fi network named Durham Guest House." He paused, sliding the tablet across the desk. "The address is not Robbie's main residence." Brian's jaw tightened as he studied the location, the Archer one. In the heart of the city's most exclusive apartment complex, Antoine provided his report. "We can confirm a period of 6 months, he stated, then added. "But there is more to uncover. Do you recall the fertility clinic appointments that Mrs. Siva referenced? The ones she has attended consistently over the past 3 months?" Brian acknowledged with a nod, his voice unwavering even as tension gathered in his shoulders. Antoine accessed another set of data. Her phone never once connected to the clinic's network, he revealed. Yet on those precise dates and times, he let the implication linger, displaying another map to Brian, this one pinpointing the same luxury apartment building. Brian leaned back in his chair, his expression hardening. "Pull every available detail on that apartment. Property records, utilities, surveillance footage. I need to know the owner and every individual who has entered or exited." "Already on it," Antoine confirmed. "Additionally, we have observed intriguing patterns in the Durham Development's network traffic. Their financial servers have been receiving encrypted data bursts during those identical time windows." "Expand the surveillance net," Brian commanded, turning back to his monitors. "Full spectrum, digital and physical. I want eyes and ears on both locations." Antoine rose and paused at the door. "Sir, if this unfolds as I suspect, the situation could become complicated. Durham Developments remains our most significant client." Brian's reflection in the darkened monitor betrayed no emotion. "Then we must ensure our evidence is ironclad." He opened another window, his fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. "And Antoine, keep this confidential for now. No one else is to be informed." "Understood," Antoine replied with a nod before exiting, closing the door silently behind him. Alone once more, Brian accessed his personal files. The screen filled with images from happier times, his wedding day, family gatherings, fishing trips with Robbie. His cursor lingered over a recent photograph, Carissa at his parents' anniversary dinner, seated conspicuously close to Robbie, both sharing a laugh over some private joke. He then opened his secure messaging system and composed a brief message to Nadia Moyer. He had worked with a forensic accountant on previous cases and now needed a discrete analysis. Sending the files now, priority level alpha. The pieces were beginning to form a pattern, and Brian Cordova had built his career on recognizing patterns. As he started compiling the data, a plan was already taking shape in his mind. They thought they were being clever, but they had forgotten one crucial detail. In the digital age, every action leaves a trace, and Brian was exceptionally skilled at following traces. The following week brought a flood of revelations, each more damning than the last. Brian sat in his private conference room, surrounding himself with digital and paper trails that painted an increasingly disturbing picture. Nadia Moyer's preliminary report lay open on his tablet, its contents making his blood boil. "These returns are textbook red flags," Nadia explained over the secure video call, her sharp features highlighted by her office lighting. I have analyzed similar schemes before, but rarely this sophisticated. She shared her screen, pointing out specific transactions. See these construction projects? Half of them do not exist beyond paper. The other half are dramatically overvalued. Brian scrolled through the data, his technical background helping him grasp the implications quickly. My father put his entire retirement fund into this. Harold Cordova's investment appears to be one of the cornerstones, Nadia confirmed. His name and reputation attracted a significant number of secondary investors. The monthly returns they are seeing, it is all smoke and mirrors. A classic Ponzi structure, using new investments to generate fake returns on the older ones. The door opened, and Antoine entered with a fresh stack of reports. Sir, you need to see this. We have been monitoring your parents' communication as requested. Brian motioned for him to continue while keeping Nadia on the call, and Antoine pulled up several email threads on the main screen. Your mother has been particularly active in social circles. Antoine began by noting that she had been promoting Durham developments to everyone within her country club network. However, it was the private messages that proved most revealing. He highlighted several exchanges in which she consistently compared you to Robbie, and not in a favorable light. A particular email chain caught Brian's eye. His mother's words burned into his retinas. Robbie understands the value of real business, unlike some people who waste their time with computers. We should have encouraged Brian to join Durham Developments instead of letting him start that security company. There's more. Antoine continued, somewhat hesitantly. Your parents have been pushing several of their friends to invest their retirement funds with Durham. Your mother specifically uses phrases like, "It's what Brian would do if he understood real business." Nadia interjected from the video call. That explains some of the investment patterns I'm seeing. The social pressure from respected community members like your parents created a perfect environment for this scheme to flourish. Brian's phone buzzed, another message from his mother. Don't forget dinner this Sunday. Carissa's already confirmed she'll be there. She never misses family gatherings, unlike some people. Before he could respond, Antoine's tablet lit up with an alert. Sir, we just got a hit on the Durham guest house surveillance. He pulled up the footage on the main screen. The timestamp showed last Tuesday evening. The high-definition camera captured Carissa entering the building, her designer handbag clutched close. 10 minutes later, Robbie Durham walked through the same door, looking over his shoulder before entering. The timestamp showed their exit at 7 a.m. the next morning. She told me she was at her sister's house that night, Brian said, his voice cold. Said they were planning a baby shower for their cousin. Antoine checked his notes. Her sister was in Miami that entire week. We have her credit card records and flight details. Nadia spoke up from the video call. Mr. Cordova, given what we're uncovering here, I recommend we expand the financial investigation. This level of deception usually indicates deeper involvement. Brian cut her off, standing up. I want every transaction, every account, and every property tied to Durham Developments audited. Go back 5 years. He turned to Antoine. Keep the surveillance running. I want to know every move they make. After both Nadia and Antoine had left, Brian remained in the conference room, studying the freeze frame of Carissa and Robbie entering the apartment building. His wedding ring caught the light as he reached for his phone, pulling up a contact he had hoped never to need. Magdalena Banks, federal prosecutor. The next phase of Brian's plan required perfect timing and even better technology. He stood in his bedroom, supervising as his most trusted technical team installed the latest in surveillance equipment under the guise of a home security upgrade. The cameras are virtually undetectable, Jordan, his lead technician, explained quietly. 4K resolution, infrared capability, and a direct feed to our secure servers. He pointed to various spots around the room. We've got complete coverage, including audio. Carissa walked in, barely glancing up from her phone. Are you still playing with your gadgets, honey? Her tone dripped with condescension. Robbie says most of these security systems are just expensive toys. You can never be too careful, Brian replied smoothly, noting how she tensed slightly at Robbie's name. Especially with all the recent break-ins in the neighborhood. Whatever makes you feel better, she smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes. I'm going to my afternoon appointment. Don't wait up, it might run late. As soon as she left, Jordan pulled up the system's interface on his tablet. We're live, sir. Every camera is functioning perfectly. He hesitated before adding, "Are you sure you want to see everything? These might reveal more than you expect." Brian's expression remained impassive. Sometimes the truth hurts, Jordan, but lies kill. He checked his watch. How long until the phone tap is active? Already done. We're recording all calls and messages, with backup copies storing automatically. The system proved its worth almost immediately. That evening, while supposedly at her appointment, Carissa's phone call with her sister came through crystal clear. "You won't believe what Harold and Margaret said." Carissa's voice bubbled with excitement. "They're going to sign over their vacation house as a wedding gift once I leave Brian. They think their precious Robbie deserves a proper family home." Her sister's laugh came through the speaker. "They're going to lose their minds when they find out he's the father. How are you going to break it to Brian?" "Please," Carissa scoffed. "He's so wrapped up in his computers, he probably won't notice I'm pregnant until I'm in labor. Besides, Harold and Margaret already blame him. They think their sad excuse for a son drove me away with his neglect." Brian listened to the entire conversation, his face a mask of controlled anger. The next day, he set the final trap. "I've got a late meeting tomorrow night," he mentioned casually over breakfast. "Some potential new clients from Europe. Different time zones and all that." Carissa barely hid her smile behind her coffee cup. "Don't worry about me. I'll find something to keep me busy." The cameras caught everything that night. Carissa's phone call to Robbie, their meeting at the house while they thought Brian was away, every incriminating word and action. But it was the next evening, when he confronted her with initial evidence, that the trap snapped shut. "Care to explain these photos?" He laid out surveillance stills on their kitchen counter. "You and Robbie seemed very friendly at his guest house." Instead of denying it, Carissa's facade cracked, years of pretense falling away to reveal the contempt beneath. "You want the truth? Fine," she snapped. "Robbie gave me everything you couldn't. A baby, a future, actual passion instead of cold logic and computer screens. And my parents." Brian's voice remained steady even as the hidden cameras recorded every word. "They love him more than they ever loved you." She laughed harshly. "Why do you think they pushed everyone they know to invest with him? They're hosting our engagement party next week. Don't bother calling them. They've already chosen sides." What Carissa failed to notice in her moment of triumphant revelation was the small device on their bedside table, an innocent-looking smart home hub that was streaming her entire confession to multiple secure servers and to one particular recipient, Magdalene Banks, Robbie's wife and a federal prosecutor specializing in financial crimes. The trap was complete, but it was only the beginning. As Brian watched Carissa storm out of the house, he knew that the real battle was just starting. He pulled out his phone and sent a single text to Antoine. "Initiate Protocol Judas." The pieces were in place. Now it was time for the game to begin. The FBI's white-collar crime division occupied the 12th floor of a nondescript federal building. Brian Cordiva sat in a secure conference room, the morning sun casting long shadows across the polished table. Across from him, Magdalena Banks adjusted her position, her 7-month pregnancy visible beneath her expertly tailored Navy suit. Agent Erica Donovan, head of financial crimes, completed their triangle, her sharp eyes scanning the documents spread before them. "Your surveillance data confirmed what I've suspected for months," Magdalena said, spreading additional files across the table. Her voice carried the precise tone of a seasoned prosecutor. "Durham Developments isn't just running a simple fraud. It's a front for something much bigger." Brian nodded, pulling out his laptop. 3 years ago, Robbie convinced my father to invest his entire retirement savings. Entire pension. Dad then leveraged his position as a retired judge to bring in his friends from the country club. He pulled up a spreadsheet. The total exposure is approximately $50 million in retirement funds. Agent Donovan leaned forward, her expression grim. "Those recordings you provided, they're exactly what we needed. But we've uncovered something that makes this case priority 1. She slid a classified folder across the table. "Your friend Robbie has connections we didn't expect." Magdalena picked up the thread last month. "I found documents linking Durham Developments to shell companies in Dubai. The timing is crucial. Robbie's planning to flee with the money after the engagement party. He already has a private jet on standby." "Of course he does." Brian's voice carried a sharp edge. Always had a flair for the dramatic. Agent Donovan pulled up surveillance photos on the room's main screen. "We've been tracking his movements. weekly meetings with known members of international fraud syndicates. Your company's security systems caught what our standard surveillance missed. The irony isn't lost on me, Brian remarked. He's been using my own security infrastructure to conduct his illegal operations. Magdalena shifted uncomfortably, one hand resting on her belly. There's something else you need to know, Brian. The pregnancy. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Robbie's been telling everyone he's the father, but I found medical records suggesting otherwise. Classic misdirection. Agent Donovan interjected. Keep everyone focused on the personal drama while the real crime continues. Brian's expression remained neutral, but his eyes hardened. What's our next move? We need more, Agent Donovan stated flatly. The offshore accounts, the fake construction projects. We need to prove they're all connected. Your surveillance gave us probable cause, but we need concrete evidence of the money trail. I can help with that. Brian opened another file on his laptop. My teams. We have been tracking every digital footprint. What we discovered, he turned the screen toward them, revealing complex financial diagrams, is not merely about the money. They are using the construction projects to launder funds from multiple sources. Magdalena leaned forward, her prosecutor's instincts kicking in. This is exactly what we need. But we have to move carefully. If Robbie suspects we are onto him, he will. Brian's voice carried absolute certainty. He won't. He is too convinced of his own brilliance. That has always been his weakness. Agent Donovan nodded approvingly. We will need to coordinate our moves carefully. Your parents' involvement complicates things. My parents made their choice. Brian's tone was ice cold. They chose their side when they decided to back him over their own son. There is one more thing, Magdalena added, pulling out a final document. The engagement party they are planning. It is not just a celebration. Based on the guest list, it is a gathering of every major player in their scheme. One location, all the targets together. Perfect timing. Agent Donovan smiled grimly. But we will need someone on the inside, someone they will not suspect. Brian's laptop pinged with an incoming message. He read it quickly, his expression darkening. That will not be a problem. My mother just sent me an invitation. Apparently, they want me there to handle things gracefully. Can you maintain cover? Agent Donovan asked directly. Personal involvement can complicate operations. Brian's laugh held no humor. Agent Donovan, I have been maintaining cover since I first spotted those login anomalies. They have no idea who they are really dealing with. Magdalena touched her belly again, her expression hardening. Just remember, when this all goes down, Robbie is mine to prosecute. He is going to learn what it means to betray the wrong people. Agreed. Brian stood, gathering his materials. But first, we need to let them think they are winning. The more confident they get, the more mistakes they will make. Agent Donovan gave a final, silent nod of resolve. With their meeting concluded, they would establish secure communication channels. All information would flow exclusively through this office. As the gathering drew to a close, Magdalena gently caught Brian's arm. Thank you, she said quietly, for being the one who finally caught him. Brian's response was simple. Sometimes the best revenge is letting people destroy themselves. He gathered his belongings, his thoughts already advancing to the next phase of their strategy. At Sentinel Cybersecurity, Jordan Astor's workspace in the secure basement laboratory resembled a digital war room. Multiple monitors displayed continuous streams of data, financial records, and surveillance feeds. The young security analyst's fingers moved rapidly across his keyboard as Brian entered. Sir, you need to see this, Jordan stated without looking up from his screens. Remember those encrypted emails we intercepted? I finally decrypted them. He brought a series of documents to the main display. Durham Developments isn't merely operating a Ponzi scheme. They're laundering money for an international real estate fraud network. Brian moved closer, examining the intricate web of financial transactions. Show me. Observe these seemingly legitimate construction projects. Jordan highlighted several developments. They're genuine, but they serve as camouflage. The company has been systematically inflating costs, fabricating invoices, and utilizing these projects to cleanse millions in illicit funds. And my father's involvement in all this. Jordan paused briefly before accessing another collection of files. Your father's status as a retired judge, they didn't simply exploit it to attract investors. His reputation provided legitimacy to the entire operation. Examine these documents. His signature appears on dozens of property transactions, all connected to known fraudulent enterprises. He knew. Brian's voice remained emotionless. He had to understand what he was authorizing. There's additional information, Jordan continued, switching screens. We successfully accessed Carissa's private cloud storage. You might want to sit down for this revelation. The monitor filled with documents, private school applications, trust fund arrangements, property transfers, all of them telling a deeper story. Robbie Durham was listed as the father, with substantial contributions from the grandparents, Harold and Margaret Cordiva. They have been planning this for months, Jordan explained, pulling up financial records. Credit card statements show shopping sprees, spa treatments, and even a new car, all billed to your father's accounts. They were setting up their new life while systematically draining your parents' resources. Agent Donovan's voice came from the doorway. And using those same accounts to launder more money, she added, entering the lab and nodding to Brian. Your team's work is impressive. We have been trying to crack this ring for years. Jordan pulled up more data. The construction projects were just phase 1. We found evidence of similar operations in Dubai, Singapore, and the Caymans. They are using real estate developments to move money across borders. Classic technique, Agent Donovan noted. But the scale is unprecedented. Your father's reputation opened doors that would normally be sealed tight. Brian studied the financial flows. They are getting sloppy. The closer we get to the engagement party, the more corners they are cutting. Speaking of which, Jordan interrupted, you should see what Carissa has been up to. He played a recent surveillance clip from their home system on the screen. Carissa spoke on her phone. Everything is ready. Once the engagement is announced, we will transfer the remaining funds. Brian's parents are so eager to help their new son-in-law, they have already signed the papers. Timestamp? Brian asked. Yesterday afternoon, right after she met with your mother at the country club, Jordan replied. Agent Donovan made notes on her tablet. This ties directly to the international accounts we have been monitoring. The timing matches perfectly, sir. Jordan hesitated. There is one more thing about the pregnancy. Brian held up a hand. Save it. Focus on the money trail. Personal drama is exactly what they want us distracted by. Smart. Agent Donovan approved. Keep emotions out of it. That is how we will stay ahead. Why did they never see you coming? They thought you would be too hurt to think clearly. A notification appeared on Jordan's screen. New activity on the Durham Guest House network. They're meeting right now. Good, Brian said, checking his watch. Right on schedule. Agent Donovan, I believe it's time for phase 2. FBI teams are in position, she confirmed. We're ready when you are. Jordan, maintain surveillance, Brian instructed. I want every conversation, every file transfer, every digital breadcrumb tracked and logged. What about your mother's invitation to dinner? Jordan asked. Oh, I'll be there, Brian replied, his smile devoid of warmth. They want to see their son handle things gracefully. I'll give them a performance they'll never forget. As they left the lab, Agent Donovan spoke quietly. You're taking this remarkably well, Agent Donovan. In my business, Brian responded, the biggest threat isn't the obvious attack, it's the one you never see coming. They thought they were the predators. They never realized they were the prey. 2 days before the engagement party, Brian's mother's house stood as an elegant monument to old money and social status. He parked his car in the circular driveway, the FBI surveillance van discreetly positioned down the street. The wire he wore was state-of-the-art, developed by his own company. Margaret Cordiva waited in her formal dining room, perfectly coiffed and radiating disapproval. The antique table between them held divorce papers, their crisp white pages stark against the dark wood. You need to sign these, she said, pushing the documents toward him. It's a statement supporting Carissa's divorce petition. We can't have a scandal affecting Robbie's company. Brian picked up the papers, noting his mother's signature already in place as a witness. Interesting timing. Don't be difficult, Brian. Margaret's voice carried the same condescending tone she had used throughout his childhood. This is for the best. Carissa deserves happiness with my best friend, with someone who understands the value of. It's a real business, she snapped. Someone who built something tangible, not this internet security nonsense you waste your time on. Brian set the papers down carefully. Why, mother? Why choose him over your own son? Because he's everything you're not. The facade cracked, years of disappointment pouring out. When he marries Carissa, We'll finally have the son we always wanted. Someone who can carry on the family legacy properly. The legacy of fraud. Margaret's face paled slightly before she recovered. I don't know what you're talking about. Robbie's business is completely legitimate. Your father's investments have shown excellent returns. Yes, those impressive returns. Brian's voice remained steady. Tell me, does Dad know where the money really comes from? Your father understands business. Margaret's chin lifted. Unlike you, he recognizes real opportunity when he sees it. Real opportunity, Brian echoed. Like the shell companies in Dubai? Or the fake construction projects? For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Margaret's eyes. You're just jealous of Robbie's success. Carissa's pregnancy. Yes, the pregnancy. Have you already picked out the nursery furniture for your new grandchild? As a matter of fact, we have. The baby deserves the best, and Robbie can provide that. Brian stood slowly. One last question, Mother. When did you stop loving your son? Don't be dramatic. Margaret waved dismissively. This isn't about love. It's about securing our family's future. Once you sign these papers, everything will be perfect. Perfect, Brian repeated. Like the perfect family you always wanted. Exactly. Now sign the papers. The engagement party is in 2 days, and we need everything properly arranged. Brian picked up his pen, then paused. You know what's interesting about betrayal, Mother? It never comes from your enemies. He signed the papers with a flourish, watching his mother's triumphant smile. What she didn't know was that Harold had already cracked under FBI pressure. Her husband. He was currently meeting with federal agents, agreeing to wear a wire to the engagement party. There, he said, standing. Everything properly arranged, just as you wanted. Margaret gathered the papers, missing the cold satisfaction in her son's eyes. You've done the right thing, Brian. You'll see that eventually. As he left the house, Agent Donovan's voice came through his earpiece. Got it all. Clean recording. Brian started his car, watching his mother through the window as she made a call, undoubtedly to Robbie or Carissa. How's the other operation going? Your father's cooperation is complete. He's given us everything. Documents, recordings, account numbers. The case is airtight. Perfect. Brian pulled away from the house. Let them have their moment of triumph. The engagement party is going to be quite memorable. In his rearview mirror, he could see his mother still on the phone, probably sharing news of her victory. She had no idea, she just helped seal their fate. The betrayal was complete. Now it was time for justice. The River Oaks Country Club's grand ballroom sparkled with excess. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across faces that had grown fat on stolen dreams. Brian sat in the FBI's mobile command center, surrounded by monitors showing every angle of the unfolding farce. His team had spent weeks preparing for this moment, planting cameras and microphones throughout the venue with precision that would make intelligence agencies envious. Carissa floated through the crowd in a designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary, charged, of course, to Brian's corporate account. Her baby bump was prominently displayed, a calculated prop in her performance. Beside her, Robbie Durham worked the room with the practiced charm of a career con man, his hand possessively placed on her lower back. All teams in position. Agent Donovan's voice came through his earpiece. Dubai office confirms they're ready. Interpol teams standing by in the background. Cayman facial recognition was tracking all known associates Jordan had reported. From another screen, representatives from 3 different international crime syndicates in attendance were identified. They were here to collect. Not today, Brian muttered, watching his father fidget nervously near the stage. Harold's wire was transmitting clearly, picking up snippets of damning conversations as he moved through the crowd. Then Tuan's voice cut in. Sir, we've detected attempts to access the private airfield systems. They're trying to prep the jet early. Let them try. Brian smiled coldly. Our back door in their flight systems is holding. That plane isn't going anywhere. The club's Wi-Fi network lit up with activity as guests arrived, each connection feeding into Sentinel's monitoring systems. Brian had designed the surveillance net himself, a web of code that would make escape impossible. Multiple targets moving into position, Agent Donovan updated. Margaret Cordiva is gathering the country club board members. It looks like they're discussing the next phase of investments. Brian watched his mother work the room, her social grace masking the desperation beneath. She had always been good at appearances. Tonight would strip those away forever. Mr. Cordova, one of the FBI techs called out. We're detecting encrypted transmissions to offshore accounts. They're trying to move money out ahead of schedule. Right on time, Brian nodded. Activate Protocol Echo. Across the globe, carefully planted algorithms sprang to life. Every transaction attempted by Durham Developments or its shell companies was now being diverted into FBI-controlled honeypot accounts, creating an unbreakable chain of evidence. At 8:45 p.m., Harold Cordova approached the microphone, his hands trembling slightly. Robbie raised his champagne glass, clearly expecting another glowing endorsement from his future father-in-law. Carissa's smug smile grew wider. Execute, Brian commanded. At precisely 8:47 p.m., the operation commenced. With mechanical precision, the events unfolded. Every Durham Development account worldwide froze simultaneously. Emergency alerts began flooding the phones of board members and executives. Before Robbie could finish his opening sentence, Harold stepped forward. I have a confession to make. Harold's voice cracked but held firm. He pulled index cards from his pocket, cards Brian had helped him prepare, about Durham Development, about the fraud, about everything they had done. Carissa's triumphant expression crumbled. She grabbed Robbie's arm, whispering urgently in his ear. On the surveillance feed, Brian could read her lips. They know. We have to go now. But it was too late. The club's main screens flickered to life, displaying damning evidence. Fake construction projects, money transfers, offshore accounts. Jordan had compiled the presentation himself, ensuring maximum impact. Robbie shoved Carissa aside and bolted for the nearest exit, only to find Agent Donovan waiting with her team. Robert Durham, she announced clearly, making sure the nearby phones would pick up every word. You're under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy against the United States. Carissa ran for the private entrance, stumbling in her expensive heels. Her face contorted with rage when she found the door locked, her escape route cut off by Brian's security protocols. This is impossible, she screamed. The jet is waiting. We had everything planned. Plans change. Brian's voice came from behind her. He held up his phone, showing the grounded flight plan. Did you really think I'd let you steal my money and run? You. She spat, years of pretense falling away. You pathetic excuse for a husband. We had it all figured out. Your parents knew who the better man was. Better at fraud, certainly, Brian replied calmly as FBI agents approached. But you forgot one crucial detail. You bragged about your plans in a house I designed, on phones I monitored, using systems I built. The aftermath unfolded over the following days. For weeks, with the methodical precision of a digital cascade, Brian oversaw the dismantling of Durham Developments from a specially prepared war room at FBI headquarters, where screens tracked the collapse of what had once seemed an impregnable criminal empire. 53 employees facing charges so far, Agent Donovan reported, updating the massive investigation board. Senior management was completely compromised. The legitimate employees had no idea they were working for a criminal enterprise. Suddenly, Jordan burst into the room, tablet in hand. Sir, you need to see this. We've been deep diving into Carissa's personal cloud storage, and it's worse than we thought. She wasn't just playing both sides, she was running her own game. The files revealed a stunning level of manipulation. Carissa had methodically recorded every conversation, every meeting, every illegal transaction. She built her own insurance policy, complete with blackmail material on everyone involved, including Robbie. Look at this, Jordan said, pointing to a folder labeled contingency. She had dirt on every board member, every major investor, even recordings of your parents discussing money laundering operations. Show me, Brian demanded. The audio files played back his mother's voice, crisp and clear. Of course, we're using the foundation to clean the money. It's brilliant. Who questions charitable donations? And once Robbie marries Carissa, she will have complete control of both companies. Your mother was more involved than we initially thought, Agent Donovan observed. She wasn't just supporting the fraud, she was actively facilitating it. Just then, Andon entered with another update. International assets are being seized as we speak. The Dubai office was raided, accounts frozen. But there's something else. He pulled up financial records showing a complex web of transactions. Carissa was skimming from the skimming operation. She set up her own accounts, separate from Robbie's. He had already surmised that she was planning to betray him. She was too clever by half. Brian observed dispassionately that she had never intended to remain with him. The pregnancy was merely another instrument of her manipulation. Just then, Magdalena Banks entered the room, her own pregnancy now even more pronounced. "The DNA results have just returned," she stated. "Robbie is not the father." "What? Not even close." Magdalena handed him the report. She was seeing multiple men, all wealthy, all connected to the scheme. "The father is actually a board member from one of the investment firms they were defrauding." Brian laughed, a sound utterly devoid of humor. She was hedging her bets. Multiple potential fathers meant multiple potential paydays. The revelations struck the social circuit like precision-guided missiles. Country club members, who had once looked down upon Brian's internet security nonsense, now faced financial ruin. Their retirement funds, investments, and reputations had vanished into the Ponzi scheme's black hole. Margaret Covington's charitable foundation was exposed as a money laundering operation. Its high society donations were nothing but smoke and mirrors. The very social connections she prized became evidence arrayed against her. Each luncheon date and charity gala was now scrutinized for criminal intent. "Your mother is looking at serious charges," Agent Donovan informed Brian during a late-night strategy session. "The evidence indicates she was orchestrating major parts of the operation." "She always did enjoy being in control," Brian replied, his eyes fixed on the growing evidence wall. "How many victims are we looking at?" "Hundreds directly, thousands indirectly. The foundation alone touched dozens of legitimate charities. They will all have to be investigated, their funding sources verified." International co-conspirators, seeing the net closing in, began making deals. Each new confession revealed more layers, more victims, and more stolen millions. The real estate fraud ring, which had once seemed so sophisticated, now unraveled like cheap fabric. "Sir," Jordan interrupted with another update. "We have found something." Within the encrypted correspondence of the email server, messages exchanged between your mother and Carissa laid bare a scheme being orchestrated at the Durham guest house. The emails exposed a carefully staged confrontation intended to occur after the engagement party. Carissa was to provoke Brian into a heated argument while concealed cameras recorded the entire encounter. Their plan was to utilize the footage to portray him as abusive, thereby securing sympathy during the divorce proceedings. "They accounted for every detail, Agent Donovan," came the thoughtful remark, "except for the true nature of the individual they were confronting. That has always been their critical flaw," Brian responded. "They were so certain of their own brilliance that they never looked beyond the surface, never questioned why my security systems were so perfectly suited to their needs." The fallout continued to spread, infiltrating every facet of their meticulously constructed fraud. Board members turned against one another, offering evidence in exchange for leniency. The very individuals who had eagerly participated in Robbie's scheme were now scrambling to dissociate themselves as quickly as possible. Harold Cordiva's cooperation proved invaluable. His testimony, combined with the extensive collection of digital evidence, formed an airtight case. His background as a former judge lent his statements particular weight, especially those implicating Margaret's involvement. "Your father is doing the right thing," Agent Donovan observed. "Finally," Brian replied, his gaze fixed through the one-way glass as Harold detailed yet another series of fraudulent transactions. But better late than never. 1 year later, Brian stood at his office window, watching as the city lights began to flicker on in the deepening dusk. Sentinel Cybersecurity Solutions had doubled in size, its reputation for exposing fraud establishing it as the premier firm for financial institutions across the globe. The Durham guest house, visible from his window, had been repurposed into a shelter for victims of fraud. Its once luxurious apartments now housed families working to rebuild their lives. The irony of the transformation was not lost on anyone. As the final sentencing was announced, Erica Donovan, no longer referred to solely as Agent Donovan, delivered the news. In the doorway of his office, their relationship had evolved during the long investigation, professional respect growing into something more. "Tell me," Brian said, turning from the window. "Robbie got 20 years for fraud and money laundering, with no possibility of early parole. The judge was particularly impressed by the international scope of his crimes. And Carissa pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for her testimony. She gave up everything. Her other lovers, the secret accounts, every detail of the operation. She'll serve 5 years, plus restitution. Magdalena entered, her daughter Justice toddling beside her. The former prosecutor had been appointed federal judge. Her experience with the case had driven her to reform white-collar crime sentencing. The foundation's doing well, she reported, settling into a chair. We've recovered over $60 million for the victims so far. Harold's been volunteering. He seems genuine about making amends. And my mother, house arrest, Erica replied. Her social standing is destroyed, but she avoided prison. The cooperation agreement you helped negotiate worked out. Brian nodded, remembering the conversations that had led to that agreement. Margaret's pride had finally broken when faced with the evidence of her own recorded conversations. The shelter's at full capacity, Magdalena added. Turns out your idea to convert the guest house was inspired. The symbolism alone has been powerful. Every Sunday, Brian still visited his mother's monitored apartment. Their conversations were strained but necessary, part of a longer journey toward understanding. And Margaret had learned harsh lessons about loyalty and love. Was it worth it? She asked during one visit, her once perfect home now modest and monitored. Destroying everything we built. You destroyed it, Brian corrected her. I just exposed the truth. There's a difference. The foundation they established continued growing, its success a testament to the idea that justice could take many forms. Some appeared as handcuffs, while others manifested as lines of code or financial regulations. We found more victims, Erica reported during a late-night strategy session. The international connections run deeper than we initially thought. Then we keep digging, Brian replied. That's what we do now. The truth that Robbie and Carissa never grasped was simple. In the digital age, there are no perfect crimes, only perfect evidence. Their dismissal of internet security as nonsense had been their undoing. Proof that sometimes the best revenge is letting people destroy themselves while you simply watch the system work. And in the end, as Brian watched his company grow and his new family flourish, he realized that their greatest mistake hadn't been the fraud or the betrayal. It had been underestimating the power of a man who understood that in the modern world, information was the ultimate weapon, and he had mastered its use. The final piece fell into place when Justice, now his goddaughter, looked up at him during a quiet moment and asked, Uncle Brian, why do people do bad things? Because they think they won't get caught, he answered, watching the sun set over the city they'd helped make a little more honest. But they're wrong. They always get caught. That's what we do. We make sure of it. And in that moment, as the last light faded and the city's digital pulse continued its endless rhythm, Brian knew that every betrayal, every lie, every manipulation had led to this. A purpose greater than revenge, a mission beyond justice. They had tried to destroy him, but instead, they had helped him build something truly unbreakable. Epilogue. A decade of consequences. 10 years had passed since the night Durham developments crumbled, but its ripples still echoed through the lives of everyone involved. Brian Cordiva stood at the window of his expanded corporate headquarters, now occupying 3 floors of downtown's most prestigious building. Sentinel Cybersecurity Solutions had become a global enterprise, a powerhouse specializing in uncovering financial fraud that others could not or would not detect. Another one down, Erica announced, entering his office with a tablet displaying news headlines. Their marriage 5 years ago had merged not just their lives, but their missions. Carissa's latest appeal was rejected. Life had not been kind to the former Mrs. Cordiva. After serving her initial 5-year sentence, she had violated parole by attempting to run another smaller-scale fraud scheme. The judge, coincidentally, Magdalena Banks, had shown no mercy. Carissa now faced another 15 years. Her designer clothes were replaced by prison orange, her once proud bearing broken by the weight of consequences. How's she handling it? Brian asked, more curious than concerned. Not well, according to the prison reports. She's aged 20 years and 10. Turns out luxury spa treatments aren't available in federal prison. Erica set down the tablet. She tried writing another tell-all book, but no publisher would touch it. Seems her reputation preceded her. The child she had used as a weapon in her schemes had been adopted by its real father's family after DNA tests revealed the truth. They moved overseas, ensuring Carissa would never be able to use the child for manipulation again. Robbie Durham's fate had been even harsher. 10 years into his 20-year sentence, he had aged from the charismatic fraudster into a bitter, gray-haired shell. His attempts to run schemes from inside prison had backfired spectacularly, earning him additional time and isolation. "Durham made another request to speak with you," Jordan reported, joining them with the daily security briefing. The former analyst now ran Sentinel's Fraud Prevention Division. "Says he has information about other conspirators." Same lie, different day, Brian dismissed it. He burned through his last chance 5 years ago when he tried to implicate innocent people to reduce his sentence. The Durham name had become synonymous with fraud and financial deceit. Business schools have widely used the case as a cautionary tale, teaching future executives about the dangers of unchecked greed and the impossibility of hiding financial crimes in the digital age. Margaret Cordova's transformation had been perhaps the most surprising. After her house arrest ended, she experienced what she called an awakening. Now she lived in a modest apartment, volunteering full-time at the Victim Support Center housed in the former Durham guest house. "Your mother's program is showing remarkable results," Magdalena noted during their monthly foundation board meeting. Her daughter, Justice, now 12, sat beside her, taking notes and already showing signs of following in her mother's legal footsteps. The victims she counsels have the highest recovery rate of any group. The irony was not lost on anyone. The woman who had once valued social status above all else now found purpose in helping those harmed by similar attitudes. Her relationship with Brian had slowly healed, built on a foundation of hard truths and earned trust. Harold Cordova had passed away 2 years earlier, but not before seeing the foundation he helped assist thousands of fraud victims. His last years were spent documenting his experiences, creating training materials to help law enforcement identify similar schemes. "Dad would be proud," Brian remarked during one foundation meeting. "The prevention programs are working. We've stopped 12 major fraud attempts this year alone." The foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations, with offices in 15 countries. They had recovered over $500 million for victims, but more importantly, they changed how the financial industry approached security. Antoine Monroe, still heading security at Sentinel, had developed cutting-edge fraud detection algorithms that were now industry standard. "Your father's testimony helped us understand how these schemes exploit trust," he explained during a training session. "We can discern the patterns before they proliferate." The professional relationship between Sentinel and the FBI's Financial Crimes Division had matured into a paradigm of public-private partnership. Erica's former team, now led by one of her protégés, collaborated seamlessly with Brian's analysts to preempt digital financial crimes. "Remember when they termed it internet security nonsense?" Erica smiled during a joint task force briefing. "Now every major financial institution utilizes our systems." Magdalena's judicial career had ascended meteorically. Her experience with the Durham case established her as the foremost authority on financial crime sentencing. Her reforms had been implemented nationwide, forging a more effective framework for prosecuting white-collar criminals. Justice inquired about the case again, Magdalena mentioned during a family dinner. "She is writing a paper on it for her law preparation class." "What did you tell her?" Brian asked of his goddaughter. "That sometimes the worst criminals wear suits and carry briefcases," Justice replied with wisdom beyond her years. "And that Uncle Brian taught us how to apprehend them." The Durham guest house had become an emblem of transformation. The luxury apartments that once hosted illicit meetings now accommodated a comprehensive support center for fraud victims. The building's metamorphosis reflected the broader societal shifts in addressing financial crime. "We celebrated another success story today," Margaret reported during one of her weekly calls with Brian. "A family who lost everything to a scheme similar to Robbie's. We helped them rebuild, secure justice, become whole again." The country club elite who had once dismissed Brian had been supplanted by a new generation of business leaders who prized integrity over appearances. The annual Fraud Prevention Conference, held in the same ballroom where Durham developments collapsed, now attracted global leaders in finance and technology. Carissa's former sister, who had once facilitated her schemes, now worked through the foundation's outreach program. She drew upon her experience to help identify potential victims before they could be drawn into similar fraudulent schemes. She inquired about Kissa once more. Erica mentioned that after a foundation event, she had wanted to know if Kissa had shown any remorse, or if she was only regretful for having been caught. Some people never learn. The international dimensions of the case had led to strengthened financial regulations worldwide. The same banks that once facilitated Durham's schemes now employed Sentinel systems to prevent fraud. Jordan's team had expanded to include former law enforcement officers and intelligence analysts. "We're not just catching criminals anymore," he explained during a strategy session. "We're changing how people think about financial security." The Foundation's latest initiative centered on education, teaching students about financial responsibility and the importance of due diligence. They named it the Herald Court Program for Financial Integrity, ensuring his redemption story would continue to inspire others. As Brian watched another sunset from his office window, he reflected on the decade of changes. The city skyline had evolved, but the fundamental lesson remained. In the digital age, truth eventually surfaces, and karma arrives wearing handcuffs and carrying audit reports. Ready to head home, Erica asked about their own family waiting for them. They had adopted 2 children, giving them the stable, honest home both had wished for in their own childhoods. "Almost," Brian replied, checking one last alert on his system. Another potential scheme identified. "Should we wait until morning?" "What would your father say?" she asked. "That justice doesn't take vacations," he smiled, already typing commands to initiate surveillance. "But it does work better after a good night's sleep." As they left the office, Justice's question from years ago echoed in his mind. Why do people do bad things? The answer was still the same, but now it carried a decade of wisdom. They do bad things, for they believe they will escape unscathed. Yet in a world where truth courses through digital rivers and justice articulates itself in ones and zeros, the wicked inevitably meet their downfall. And in a secluded federal prison cell, Carissa and Robbie found themselves with an abundance of time to reflect upon that very reality. This marks the conclusion of our narrative. We welcome you to share your reflections in the comments below. Thank you for your attention. If you found this story engaging, please consider subscribing to this channel. Select the video displayed on your screen, and I look forward to connecting with you there.